What's the story, morning glory? What's the word, hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and giving me the time of day today. So in this video, I wanted to talk about celebrity deaths that really affected me and damn near left me traumatized. And some of these deaths I'm still not over. So the crazy thing is that I don't know these people personally, but when they passed away, it was like my world kind of went dark. So some of them affected me more than others. Some of them I got over pretty quickly, and some of them I'm still trying to process. So Michael Jackson. Okay, when Michael Jackson passed away in 2009, I remember exactly what I was doing, where I was going, and what was happening. I was on my way to work, and I heard on the radio that Michael Jackson had died, and it was just like, it didn't even resonate inside of me. It's like I didn't even comprehend what was being said, but I was like, Michael Jackson died? I never thought there would be a world without Michael Jackson, because all my life there has always been Michael Jackson existing in this world. When I was a child, Thriller had come out, and it was like absolutely, there's no word to even describe how much of an influence this man was and how much his music was. People were dressing like him, people were trying to sing like him, dance like him. He influenced us so much, it was crazy. It didn't matter what color you were, how old you were, what part of the world you were living in. Everybody knew Michael Jackson. People were naming their children after him. I have a cousin who was named after him. It's absolutely insane how much this man influenced just about every single human being that lived on this earth. Now, I can look at the Billboard top 50 or the top 10 or whatever, and I will probably wouldn't know any of them. But there was a time when everybody living on planet Earth knew who Michael Jackson was. There's people now, I don't know who they are. There's people now, there's entertainers now that only some people know, some sections of, only the young people know this person, or only the old people know that person, or this person is really big in this community, this person is really well known in that community. Michael Jackson, he transcended all of that. He crossed every barrier. Everybody knew who the hell Michael Jackson was. So when he passed away, it was really shocking for me. I was driving, like I said, I was on my way to work. I heard on the radio that he died. And when I got to work, the very first person that I recognized, who I didn't even really know that well, I was like, did you hear that Michael Jackson died? And they were like, yeah, I heard. And, it was just like business as usual. I had to go to work. I always thought when I was a child, I always thought that when Michael Jackson died, because he was so big back in the 80s and 90s, he was so huge. So I always assumed that when he died, the whole world would shut down for a day to mourn his death. And there would be like tributes coming from all over the world, and we would just be glued to the TV watching the funeral together collectively, like it was when Princess Diana got married to Prince Charles. It was like everybody was glued to their TV, and I thought it was going to be like that when Michael Jackson died. I thought that as a child. But of course, times have changed. He lost a lot of popularity. He probably lost a lot of supporters and fans or whatever with all the scandals that were associated with him. But it was shocking that he was dead. It did not affect me, deeply affect my soul, but it did affect me. It did affect me. It was very shocking when he passed away. Now, the reason why I wasn't seriously troubled when he died was because Michael Jackson kind of lived, a strange lifestyle. I remember there were stories, I don't know if they were true or not, that he was sleeping in an oxygen tank. When he died because, his doctor was giving him some type of concoction that it's only given to medical patients who are going under general anesthesia before they go into major surgery. His doctor was giving that to him for him to help him sleep. So it was kind of like, I'm not going to say expected, but when you looked at how he died and when you looked at how he lived and how he died, it was sort of like it might have, it was going to happen. He was gone way too soon. I think he died way too young, but he lived a life where it was sort of like, I'm not going to say expected, but it was sort of like, well, you're taking all these strange medications and these strange concoctions. Most likely this was going to, be his demise. So him dying was very shocking for me, but I was able to process it. Moving on, Prince. When Prince passed away, I took that even harder than when Michael Jackson passed away. Because when Prince passed away, it was really unexpected. I never knew of him doing anything weird. I never knew of him living any kind of a weird lifestyle. It seemed like he was really healthy. He was in his 50s. He was still touring. So was Michael Jackson. He was in his 50s. He was still touring. So when he died, I was like, it just came out of nowhere. That's a death that I'm still processing. He was so crazy talented, and I felt like the world will never get over the loss of Prince because we lost a really, really good one, a great one. And what hurt me even more is like how he died. The fact that he died in the elevator of his home and that no one knew. It took a while for someone to discover that he had passed away. It wasn't like they knew immediately. He died alone in this elevator in his, I guess, his mansion. And the fact that he was dead for a while before anyone discovered him, that hurt me a lot. And I think he had died because of over medication or overdosing on pain medication. I think that's the reason why he died. So he's in his elevator. And I think days leading up to his death, everything was really normal. You know, I don't think he was sick. I don't think he was going through any kind of medical complication. It was like he was in his elevator going about his business and then he was gone. And so the suddenness of his death really affected me, and how he died affected me. The fact that he died alone in this elevator, it kind of broke my heart because this is someone who was so famous, so talented. The whole world loved him, but he died alone like this, you know, in this really tragic way. So the way his manner of dying, it just really hurt my heart. And I'm still not over that. I'm still processing that. Like, how did that happen? How could that have happened? You know, you would expect that someone like him, when it was his time to go, that he would have been surrounded by loved ones, just like an outpouring of love in his last moments. But instead, he died alone. So that was hard for me. Heatherorourke is another one. So I never watched the movie Poltergeist, but I'm very familiar with that scene, that very famous scene in the movie where, now she was a child actor who was featured in the movie Poltergeist, which was a very, very successful film back in the 80s. And there was this one scene that was really famous where she's sitting in the living room of her home and she's in front of the TV and it's all dark, all the lights are off except for the light coming from the television. And she's sitting in front of the TV and all she's watching is like the snow that comes on when a program is like when the network shuts down and all you see is the snow. And someone comes into the living room. I think it was her parents. I guess they're trying to figure out why was she still awake in the middle of the night. So I think someone comes into the living room and then she turns her head over her shoulder and she goes, "They're back." Because I guess some type of a entity was coming through the TV or something. That was a very famous scene. Those lines, "They're back," were very, very iconic. And so I remember one day I was Googling, I don't know if I was Googling the movie or I was Googling her, trying to figure out like whatever happened to that, you know, that blonde child actress that was in Poltergeist. So I'm Googling her and it says that she died, and she died at the age of 12. And I think she died from cancer. I was just like, what? It really shocked me because that scene, like I said, I've never seen the movie Poltergeist, but I remember seeing that scene over and over and over again. It was played continuously when that movie first came out. So for some reason, that scene and that child resonated with me in my head. It like stuck in my brain. So when I found out that she had died, it was unexpected. I wasn't, because who expects a child to pass away? So when I found out that she had passed away, it floored me. I was like, oh my God, that little girl died. And she died as a child, you know, from some type of a terminal illness. So that one was hard for me. Even though I never watched the movie, never saw her in anything else, for whatever reason, that one scene with her sitting in front of that TV and saying, "They're back," really affected me. And I've always remembered that child. Next one, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Okay, Philip Seymour Hoffman, the reason why his death was hard for me, I wasn't like a crazy Philip Seymour Hoffman fan. I only saw him in a couple of movies. I think the first time that I knew who he was in The Talented Mr. Ripley, I think. And I remember his role in that movie, for me, was very memorable. I love The Talented Mr. Ripley because that's one of my favorite actors, Matt Damon. So I remember his character was like, it resonated. It was like, I remember that character. So I think he did a great job in that movie. I don't know if I've seen anything else from him, but for whatever reason, that character that he played in The Talented Mr. Ripley stuck with me. So I've always had heard about him. You know, you hear about him doing movies or making appearances. He's always been like in the background of my mind. So when I found out that he passed away, for some reason, that affected me. I was like, what? I just didn't see it coming. And I think he died from a drug overdose. That really affected me. And I was just like, oh my God. So now and then he'll pop into my mind for whatever reason. And I'll just kind of sit there and I'll be like, wow, he died. And his death is something that, you know, it took a while for me to process, but I think I'm over it now. Okay, next one, Whitney Houston and bobbichristina. Okay, first, when Whitney Houston died, it was shocking for me because even though there were all these rumors of her being a crackhead and having this addiction problem, I was still like, okay, it's Whitney Houston. She's going to get through it. So when I found out that she passed away, it was shocking. I remember exactly what happened when I heard it, what I was doing, where I was. And I remember as soon as I heard it, I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, Whitney Houston died. And my mom was shocked. So that was shocking. But then again, it was kind of like, you know, after I gave it some time to process in my head. I was like, okay, you know, she was a drug addict. She was suffering with addiction. And, you know, kind of like this was bound to happen. But I didn't understand like the circumstances of her death. Like she was in this bathtub, but she drowned, I think. She drowned in the bathtub or did she overdose in the bathtub? It was some really strange things going on when she died. So it didn't really make any sense to me. Then... okay, so it was like, okay, Whitney Houston died. She was a drug addict. She was suffering she had all these issues that she was, you know, suffering with. Okay, we get it. This is what's very common for a lot of, you know, famous people. You know, this is how they deal or how they process their fame and their insecurities. Okay, whatever. So time goes by and everybody knows who bobbichristina is. I watched the reality TV show. I think it was called Being Bobby Brown or something. I watched that reality TV show and it was really sad. It was a really, really sad show. And then bobbichristina, she kind of blossomed because when she was little, she was, you know, kind of chubby, a little bit awkward. And then she kind of blossomed into this really pretty girl. She lost all the baby fat and, you know, she was doing her thing. And then all of a sudden she passed away in a very similar manner that, you know, that was like her mom. And then it was like, okay, they both died in a bathtub. They're both, I guess, having these drug issues, addiction issues. I was like, what's going on? So it was really strange that, you know, the mother and the daughter died in a similar fashion. And it makes you wonder, there had to have been something else going on. So then Nick Gordon comes into the picture, or he was always in the picture, but he was somewhere lurking around in the background of their lives. And so Nick Gordon, who everybody kind of felt like had something to do with their deaths or has something to do with bobbichristina's demise, and kind of like, you know, I always felt like there should have been some type of like connection with Nick Gordon and the deaths of Whitney Houston and bobbichristina. That's what I felt like. But, you know, maybe it was just me trying to put blame on someone for the deaths of these, you know, beautiful women, talented, a singer and her beloved daughter. Like, you just want to point the finger at someone. And he was sort of like a suspicious character. He was this pretend son for Whitney Houston and like possibly pretend brother slash boyfriend slash husband of bobbichristina. Very strange, very weird circumstances. And so, you know, you kind of feel better when you're angry, I guess, when you're going through the steps of, what do they call it? The several steps of grief or whatever. You get to a point where you're like blaming. And so I kind of felt, I was at that stage where I was like blaming Nick Gordon, like he has something to do with this. Why can't they figure out what he did to these two women? Then he dies. Now his death was really shocking as well, but then he died of a drug overdose as well. So yeah, Whitney Houston, bobbichristina, their deaths were very, very shocking. But then when the reports are saying that they were suffering through addiction, it's like, okay, yeah, you know, this was bound to happen. Moving on, Anthony Bourdain. That was hard. That was hard. I remember watching his show on CNN. I think he would have that travel show where he was traveling all over the world and introducing us to different cultures and different cuisines all over the world. And you just can't help but fall in love with this man. He was very charismatic. he seemed like someone that was very approachable. Like if you saw him out in public, like he wouldn't mind saying hello to you, and giving you an autograph, maybe even a picture. Just someone that you watch all the time on TV and you feel like you know them. So then when you find out that they committed suicide, that he died by suicide, you are like, your brain is trying to connect the dots. Like, what is going on? Like, what would make him do that? Of course, we all know that depression and mental health issues affects everybody, regardless of how much money you make, how famous you are, how wonderful your life appears. We all understand that. But it doesn't take away the shock of losing someone that was very admirable, and that you kind of felt like you knew him because you watch him all the time on TV, and you just would never see, you just don't see it coming. Now, people who have addiction issues, people who have, like where you've seen them going through mental health issues, if they die by suicide, it's kind of like, okay, we were just bracing ourselves for this. But for someone who seemed like they didn't have those issues, it was even more shocking. Anthony Bourdain's death, when it happened, shocked me. But then when I kind of read more about it, and that he was having mental health issues, that he suffered with depression, I was kind of like, okay, there's that time when someone who's going through those issues where it's like they just don't see any other way out, and you can really sympathize with what they were going through. But nonetheless, his death was shocking for me. Phyllis Hyman, very familiar with her music. I didn't really know her when she was actually popping because I was really, really young to be into Phyllis Hyman music. But as I got older and, they played on the radio, I got more familiar with her. So one day I'm like, oh, Phyllis Hyman, I'm very familiar with her music. I like her songs. Let me see where she's up to now. Come to find out, she committed suicide. I was like, oh my God, that was very shocking for me. Even though when she was still alive, and when she was really, famous, and, she was really part of pop culture, I didn't really know her because I was young at the time. I didn't really know her. Maybe I was familiar with her music, but I really didn't know her. I began to be more interested in her and her music when I was older. So when I found out that she had died by suicide, it was shocking for me because it was like I created this image of who she was and how she lived. And then to realize that this is how it all ended, it was hard for me. Now, what broke my heart about Phyllis Hyman's death was her suicide note. I don't know what all she wrote in it, if she had written anything else, but the one line that you can Google, it's always mentioned when you Google Phyllis Hyman, the one line that she wrote in her suicide note was, "I'm tired." Man, I'm kind of getting emotional. That was hard for me to know that she was going through something where she just was just so tired of fighting. Maybe it was just the pressure of fame, the pressure of everybody wanting you to be a certain way, to look a certain way, and the pressures of this music industry and the entertainment industry in general can be just so cruel. You're constantly, you're just always fighting for that top spot. I don't know what she went through. I have no idea. But for her to say, "I'm tired," and then to end her life makes me think that, it has something to do with just the pressures of her career. And maybe other personal issues too that we would never know. We'll never know. But her death was hard for me because, anytime that someone dies by suicide, it's so hard for me. And the fact that she wrote, "I'm tired," that really it was heartbreaking. Robin Williams, I'm not over that. I'm not over Robin Williams. Well, Robin Williams, someone who has always been a part of my conscious. He's always been there, guaranteed to make you laugh, to make you smile, to make you forget about your problems, no matter what he did. I grew up watching Mork and Mindy. I saw Mrs. Doubtfire. I didn't see Dead Poet Society, but I like his movies where he played a more serious role. Seen several of his films. Love the man. Just crazy talented. The fact that he was such a great improviser. Just, you can't say enough about Robin Williams. So not only was it hard for me to accept that he died, and it was also hard for me to accept that he died by suicide, but like how he was found also was like troubling. Just talking about it, I'm like getting chills. The fact that he had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I had read that he hung himself, but it was in such a manner where he was kind of like in a sitting position, but a little bit elevated off the floor. And he had concocted this, he had the rope that he had used, you know, the way that he had to form it, tie it, so that he could take his life, and in kind of like in a sitting, like he was sitting up against the wall, but like I said, his body was a little bit elevated. That is just like when people die by suicide and they use a rope, and you think about how, what I think about what was going through his mind as he was arranging this rope that was going to go around his neck, that was going to take his life. Because it's like, it's one thing if you just kind of like shoot yourself, or if you take a whole bunch of pills, you know, because if you shoot yourself, it's really quick. You know, if you shoot yourself correctly, it's really quick. If you take a whole bunch of pills, hopefully you'll just kind of like drift into unconsciousness. If you fall off a bridge, you know, the impact is going to be quick. Or fall off a building, the impact is going to be quick. But to like go to do it through hanging yourself and taking the time to figure out how you're going to arrange the rope, and you know how you're going to do it so that the rope doesn't break and it can still, it's just heartbreaking to think of that, to think about him going through that. Loved Robin Williams and everything he did, his stand-up, his movies, his funny movies, his serious movies, his dramatic roles. Absolutely adored the man. So when he passed away, and the manner of how he passed away, it hurt. It hurt a lot. And I'm still not over that one. John Ritter. Okay, I grew up on Three's Company. Watched it so many times. I still watch Three's Company to this day. I still watch it. I am a huge Three's Company fan. I'm the kind of person, I rarely watch a movie more than once. I won't read a book more than once. I'll see it once, read it once, I'm done. Very few sitcoms I can actually sit there and watch it all over again from beginning to end, from the first to the last season. Very few. Three's Company is one of those that I can sit there and watch. Another reason why John Ritter holds a special place in my heart, because obviously I love Three's Company, but the Three's Company, that whole show is special to me because I remember being a very young girl, 3, 4, 5 years old, watching Three's Company with my mom. And that's how we would spend our afternoon. You know, she would pick me up from daycare when she got off work. We'd come home, make something to eat, and then we'd sit there and we'd watch Three's Company while my dad was at work. And I just remember, I like clearly remember those days of watching Three's Company with my mom. And I think when we were watching it, it was still in production, so we weren't even watching reruns. So Three's Company, The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, WKRP in Cincinnati, those shows are very near and dear to me because it reminds me of my childhood with my mother. So I fell in love with Jack Tripper, fell in love with John Ritter. I just loved him so much. So when he died, that was hard for me. And when he died, he was still working. I think he was doing that sitcom, 10 Rules to Dating My Daughter or something like that. It was during that era when sitcoms had like really long titles, like in the early 2000s. I think it was called 10 Simple Rules to Dating My Daughter. So he was still working. And so when he died, it was so unexpected. And I think he died from a brain aneurysm, which is so scary because it could happen to any one of us. But it was like so heartbreaking that someone so lovable and just every time I think of John Ritter, I think of Jack, I think of Three's Company, always puts a smile on my face. He was such a big part of my childhood. So when he passed away, that was hard for me. I'm not quite over that at all. Like watching Three's Company, I can still watch it, but I can't watch it without thinking of him not being with us anymore. Now, Three's Company, one of my all-time favorite sitcoms for so many reasons. It was genuinely funny to me, and also because, you know, the memories that it holds for me. But I remember there are 2 episodes on Three's Company when I watch, I will 2 episodes that I absolutely refuse to watch, which is one episode is the one where Janet wanted to be a dance instructor. She had this dream of becoming a dance instructor. So she was working under this guy who was just a complete sleazeball, but she didn't see it at the time because he was pumping her up with false confidence. He was making her think that she was so super talented, but he was actually just really sleazy and was just trying to hit on her, but she didn't see it at the time. So when he one day they were at the dance studio and he was coming on to her and she was rejecting him. She rejected him. And he was like, well, let me tell you something. You don't have what it takes to be a dancer. And then she was like, well, you don't have what it takes to be a human being. And that's a very heartbreaking scene for me because, you know, she thought that she really had what it took to make her dream come true. Coming to find out, this guy was just, you know, he was just like filling up her head with lies. And all he really wanted was just to get her in bed. And so he walks off, and then Jack was in there. He was in the studio. And then Jack had been trying to tell her, this guy really is not what you think he is. He's a sleazeball, and he's just trying to get into your pants, but she didn't want to believe it. So when her and the guy had that falling out, Jack was there. And so he walks up to Janet, and Janet stops him, and she says, Jack, I know what you're going to say. And then she goes on and on saying, you're going to say that I was an idiot, that I was so stupid for falling for his, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, you know, I was just stupid for falling for him and letting him making me think that I was talented. And all Jack says is, I wasn't going to say any of that. And she goes, you weren't? And he says, no. He goes, I was just going to say, can I have this dance? And then they start dancing. And I'm getting teary-eyed. That was a sweet moment for me. But I refuse to watch that episode because it's so emotional for me. The other one that I won't watch on Three's Company is I will not watch the episode where Terry was going to be their third roommate. And Terry and Jack had bad blood before she moved in because he had to go to the hospital for something, and Terry was the nurse at that hospital, and she had to give him a shot. And I don't know what was going on. He was being a baby. He was being a really big baby about getting the shot. And so her bedside manners was a little bit rough around the edges because she just wanted to give him the shot and get it over with. So he already had like bad feelings about her. And then coming to find out that she was going to be their roommate, he wasn't having it. So him and Larry, they were going to have a party, like a welcoming party for her. And everybody was going to come over to their apartment and celebrate. And Jack and Larry had planned all of these gags and tricks to play on her, basically just to embarrass her. So they gave her glasses to wear, these fake glasses to wear that left like dark ink under her eyes. They took a picture of her with this camera that shot out this black ink and ruined her dress. So they're doing all these gags on her. And it was just so embarrassing to watch her basically get bullied in front of everybody. And I didn't like it. So that's another episode that I won't watch. So yeah, John Ritter, his death was really hard for me because, you know, a big part of my childhood, just brings me wonderful, warm memories of my mom and me when I was little. So I can't take it. John Ritter, that was a hard one for me. Chriskelly from Criss Cross. That was hard for me as well because he was so young. Everybody knows Criss Cross. You know, Criss Cross was like, you know, when I was a teenager, they were everywhere. And everybody wanted to look like them, dress like them. Everybody was listening to their music. It was crazy. So come to find out that he had passed away from a drug overdose. And that was hard for me. You know, and also he was like a cutie patootie. So when I found out that Chriskelly died, at the age of 35, that was hard for me because, you know, he was like this lovable kid who was rapping, and now it was just hard. So Chriskelly, that was a tough one for me. That's also one where, like, if I see anything about Criss Cross, I will unconsciously or subconsciously try to avoid it. Like, I'm not even realizing that I'm avoiding it. But if there's any kind of, like, if you're watching like a countdown of the greatest rap acts, rap duos, or if they're mentioned in any way, I can't listen to anything regarding Criss Cross because I haven't processed Chriskelly's death. So Mike Evans, the one who played the original Michael on The Jeffersons, the son of Louise and George Jefferson, his death was hard for me as well. He died at the age of 57, and I think he died from cancer. So that's hard for me because he was always my favorite Michael. I loved that first Michael. And knowing what I know of how he was able to put Good Times in production, how he assisted with the production and the starting of Good Times, I admire this guy a lot. And also he was an actor. He wasn't the best actor. I don't think he was the best actor, but he was still very, very lovable. So that's also, and then he got better as he got older. What do they say? He aged like wine. He got better as he got older. He was really, you know, he was a cutie patootie when he got older. So Mike Evans, that's another one that was hard for me. This one I save for last because it's going to be hard to talk about. Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther. That I'm not over. I don't think I will ever be over that death because he was, I mean, he played a superhero, and you kind of think like he was a superhero. So to see how cancer affected him and actually took him away from us, yeah, that was hard. I had seen Black Panther. I didn't see number 42. I did see Black Panther, fell in love with him, thought he was just awesome. And then soon after that he's gone. So it was just too much. The success, the popularity, the impact of Black Panther, and then he's gone. It's just like, what? Like, that is so cruel. What a cruel thing to happen. And so I remember that seeing a picture of him, and this is when he was really sick. I had no idea that he was sick. So there was this picture that was floating around on the internet of him really thin, looking very ill. And people were trying to speculate, like what's wrong with him? What happened? So some people were speculating that he had lost weight for a movie role. Like this was part of, him trying to transition into a character for a movie role. People were speculating that he was sick. People were speculating that he was addicted to something. But it was cancer. And to think that when I saw that picture, he was actually dying, that's what made it harder for me to accept his death. I don't think I would have ever accepted his death, though. So I saw the picture, and I'm like looking at the picture, and I'm like, what happened? What's wrong with him? And then coming to find out that he died from cancer, I was like, oh, so that was a picture from when he was really sick, and he was probably in his last days. Yeah, Chadwick Boseman, just so young, because he was so young, and you feel like he had not even touched the tip of all the things that he was going to accomplish in his life, and then he was gone. Just speechless. So Chadwick Boseman, not over that one. I am not over it. I will never be over it. That's the hardest one of all. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will definitely talk to you later. Bye-bye.